Welcome back to English from A to Z.
Great to be here.
And today's deep dive. Well, this one is tailored specifically for you, the learner.
Yeah, we're not focusing on grammar charts or, long lists of vocabulary.
Not at all. We're getting into the real, messy, and honestly fascinating ways English is used in everyday life.
When the stakes are a little high, maybe?
Exactly. When you're traveling in complex social situations, that kind of thing.
We're really stripping away the rigid textbook structure today. We've got a fantastic stack of materials to work with.
We do.
We have transcripts of actual dialogues. We have interviews with celebrities, immigrants, advice columns.
Even family surveys and movie reviews.
Right. And our mission here is to get past just the definitions. We want to pull out the essential vocabulary, of course, but also the context.
The cultural understanding.
That's it. The stuff that helps you bridge that gap between what you learn in a classroom and, genuine fluency.
We're looking for those linguistic aha moments, not just how to build a sentence, but why you'd say it that way. How do you ask for the bathroom without sounding rude? What are the unwritten rules of small talk?
And maybe most importantly, how do we use English to talk about big life changes or even tough moral questions?
Yeah. So let's unpack all of this and get you fluent faster.
Let's do it.
So let's start with mastering conversational English, the real basics of just interacting with people.
Right. The anatomy of small talk and introductions.
And when we look at transcripts of real conversations, they almost never start with, hello, how are you?
No, especially not between strangers. They usually kick off with some sort of functional language, something to navigate an unplanned moment, maybe even a little accident.
Exactly. Our source material has a perfect example, a conversation between Ted and Anna who meet while they're skating.
And the very first thing said is because Ted bumps into Anna.
So he says, I'm really sorry. Are you okay?
And that phrase is it's like a mandatory social lubricant.
Yeah.
It does three things at once. It acknowledges he's at fault, it shows regret, and it checks on her well-being.
And her response, I'm fine, is just as important. It shuts down the incident. It signals, okay, no harm done, we can move on.
Right, because if it ended there, it's just a transaction, an accident and an apology.
But it doesn't. And this is where the language pivots to connection. Ted immediately compliments her. I like your shirt.
But he doesn't just leave it there, he uses it as a hook.
He does.
He follows up with, are you from Argentina?
Oh.
It's a classic, very low-risk small talk move. You use an observation.
Like clothing or an accent.
Exactly. And you turn it into a question about where someone is from. It shows curiosity without being too intrusive.
So Anna confirms she is, but listen to how she phrases it. She says, originally I was born there. And Ted asks if she grew up there, and she says yes, but her family moved here 10 years ago when she was in middle school.
That whole exchange is a fantastic template for learners. You say where you were born, you clarify where you grew up, and you give a timeline using a really relatable life stage.
Middle school.
Yeah. In the U.S., everyone knows that means you're around, 11 to 14 years old? It makes the story feel authentic and easy to understand.
And the conversation gets deeper. It moves to an exchange of favors, which is a great way to give you a reason to meet again.
Right. Ted admits he's not a great skater and asks for lessons.
And Anna then asks for help with her computer. She heard him mention he works with them.
And Ted clarifies his role. He works at a travel agency, and he's in charge of their computers.
So when she asks if he's a computer specialist, he kind of hedges.
He does. He says, well, sort of, yeah, I guess so.
That sort of is such a valuable little piece of language for a learner.
It is. It shows how native speakers often talk about their jobs. Instead of a flat yes, which can sound a bit arrogant.
Or leave you open to really difficult questions.
Right. The hedge is safer. It manages expectations. It avoids sounding like you're bragging. It's a very common social rule in, North American or British English.
So they end with a deal. Skating lessons for computer help. A perfect little structure, problem, offer, counteroffer, It guarantees they'll talk again.
It's a great example.
Okay, so let's shift from a spontaneous meeting to something a bit more formal. A celebrity interview.
Hmm.
Our material has an interview with Jerry, a fashion model from Brighton in England, and this requires a very specific, polite set of questions.
The interviewer is efficient. Where did you grow up? The answer is specific. Brighton. He even spells it Brighton and adds that detail,
Right by the sea.
which immediately gives you a sensory image. You picture him growing up near the ocean.
What I find fascinating here is the contrast between what he wanted to be as a kid and what he is now.
Yeah, he never wanted to be a model.
He wanted to be a doctor or a writer. And he admits, I always thought I looked funny.
That kind of self-deprecating humor is so common in English-speaking interviews, it makes the celebrity seem more relatable, more human.
And for a learner, that phrase, I always thought I looked funny, is a perfect way to talk about being a little self-conscious, but in a lighthearted way.
And we get more details about his hobbies, which helps build a personality beyond the job. He used to love drawing, then learned to paint. Now he even has a small gallery exhibit.
This gives learners great phrasing for talking about their own hobbies. I used to love to do this, and I still do it, actually.
And he mentions his favorite place growing up was a summer camp in Ireland for horseback riding. It just shows how personal stories are built with these specific memories and places.
So all this talk about past hobbies brings us to a really important piece of grammar.
The structure used to.
This is so vital. It's how we describe personal evolution, how we show the contrast between who we were and who we are now. It's a core skill for really expressing your own life story.
That's a great point. And for our learners, we should probably clarify something right away. There are two similar sounding structures. We're talking about used to plus the base verb. I used to play sports. This means a past habit that is finished.
Right, which is different from be used to plus the ing form. I am used to working late.
Which means you're accustomed to it. It's normal for you now. So when we're talking about life changes, we're almost always using that first one, used to.
And even the pronunciation matters, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
In fast speech, it sounds more like used to.
Exactly. I used to be messy. That's how it flows naturally.
Let's dive into the examples from the sources. They show this whole spectrum of life changes. We have the messy to neat one. When I was a kid, I used to be very messy, but now I'm very neat. A total personality shift.
And then changes in habits. I didn't used to collect anything, but now I do. And notice that negative form? Didn't used to? It's very clean.
There's one about physical health. I never used to play sports, but now I like to keep fit.
And keep fit is a great phrase. It's a common, slightly more formal way to say you exercise regularly.
Then we see changes that come with adulthood. I never used to worry about money, but I do now. That shows a big shift in financial awareness.
Or this one about appearance. When I was younger, I used to care a lot about my appearance. Now I'm too busy to care how I look. The reason, too busy, is just as important as the change.
I think my favorite is about time. I used to have a lot of hobbies, but now I don't have any free time.
That's the language of trade-offs, isn't it?
It is. And finally, civic engagement. I didn't used to follow politics, but now I check headlines online every day. So used to really is this powerful bridge connecting two different parts of your life.
And closely related to this is the wish structure.
Ah, yes.
This is how we talk about being dissatisfied with the present or wanting a change that feels impossible.
And the source gives us Terry's situation. He's a young adult still living at home, and he's just frustrated.
He is. He wishes he had his own apartment. He wishes his parents would stop worrying about him.
That phrase, stop worrying about me, is essential vocabulary for anyone wanting to express a need for independence.
And then the big one. He hates housework and wishes life weren't so difficult. The emotional weight really comes from that wish structure.
But then comes the reality check. Why doesn't he move out if life is so difficult?
Because he gets free room and board.
And that phrase, free room and board, is key. It's the practical reason that balances out the emotional desire. It's why he stays, even though he's unhappy.
We also have Brian, who's tired of his job. He just calls it my place. He needs something more exciting.
He wishes he worked somewhere else.
And what's interesting is how quickly he and his friend go from just wishing to actual planning. They start talking about moving to a new city, maybe becoming roommates.
The language shifts to possibility. We could. Maybe we should.
It shows how a personal wish can spark a joint plan.
The sources also list some other, maybe more achievable wishes. One person wishes they belong to a club or a sports team.
And they give 2 reasons: to meet people and to get in shape. It's a great way to combine social and physical goals.
Another person wishes they could type better. Very practical. They know will be useful for school and for their career.
And finally, the wish for real escape. A trip to the beach to relax.
With a very specific list of what not to bring. No computer, no cell phone, no TV, just a book.
That's the vocabulary of relief, isn't it? It's about unplugging, having a digital detox.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move into a really practical area. Navigating the urban jungle. Survival English.
Right. Logistics. Asking for information and directions.
And when you're lost in a new place, politeness is everything. It's your currency.
Absolutely. The foundational phrase here is, "Excuse me, could you tell me?"
Without that, excuse me, any request just sounds abrupt, demanding.
It does. Our source material has a perfect airport dialogue with a bunch of these requests one after another. First, finding money. "Excuse me, could you tell me where the nearest ATM is?"
And the answer is super precise, using great positional language. Upstairs, across from the duty-free shop.
Across from. A key preposition you need for clear directions.
Next, the traveler needs to get to the city. Do you know where I can catch a bus to the city?
And the answer is more about logistics than direction. Just follow the signs for transportation, which is often what you have to do, follow the symbols.
Then he needs a schedule. Can you tell me how often they run?
And the answer: every 20 minutes or so. That little phrase, "or so," is a great conversational tool. It signals an approximation, not a guarantee.
And then the question everyone needs but can feel awkward asking, do you know where the restrooms are?
The answer is so efficient. Right behind you, do you see where that sign is? Using immediate landmarks is key.
Then the traveler, Eric, comes back with more questions. And notice how he prefaces it. Excuse me, it's me again, I'm sorry.
Right, he's acknowledging he might be bothersome. He asks the cost of the bus, $20, and you can buy the ticket on the bus.
And here's the fascinating part. The helper provides context. He compares the $20 bus to a $50 taxi.
That's functional English at its best. It's not just a price. It's a mini cost-benefit analysis right there in the conversation. It helps the traveler make a smart decision.
Exactly. Finally, he needs a bookstore for a guidebook. And the directions are, again, short, sequential. Go upstairs and turn right. You'll see one on your left.
These quick transactional chats are just invaluable for practicing fast comprehension and using those directional words correctly.
Okay, so once you're actually in the city, the conversation often turns to, well, frustrations.
Yes. This is where we learn the vocabulary of complaint and civic issues.
The sources highlight some very common ones. First, public transit. The buses are old and slow.
But the complaint goes deeper. They cause too much pollution, which leads to people being less healthy. It connects transit to environmental and health vocabulary.
Then there's just the sheer number of cars. There are too many cars. All the cars, taxis, and buses are a danger to bicyclists.
Right, so you get the language of traffic safety and that conflict between different ways of getting around.
The general problem is just too much traffic. But the biggest single problem people mentioned,
Parking.
parking. There just isn't enough parking. It's the universal city complaint.
So this all leads to a really interesting case study in the source materials. If these problems are everywhere, how do some cities actually solve them?
And they look at Singapore.
which has used some very aggressive but very successful strategies to fix its traffic problems.
This is a great chance to learn the vocabulary of public policy.
It is. Singapore basically uses a three-part approach: demand management, ownership restriction, and financial disincentives.
Okay, let's break that down. Demand management. What does that mean in simple terms?
It means they make it difficult or expensive to drive in certain areas at certain times, so motorists have to buy a special pass to drive into the downtown business district.
And it has to be on your windshield.
Yep. If you don't have it, you get a big fine. It forces people to think, do I really need to drive downtown today?
Okay, second strategy. Restricting ownership.
This one is huge. It's not enough to have the money to buy a car. You have to apply for a certificate that gives you the right to own a car, and there are only a limited number of these certificates.
Wait a minute. That sounds incredibly restrictive, like a huge government overreach. Was there any mention of public backlash to that?
The sources don't focus on backlash, but they do emphasize its effectiveness. The logic is that it's a small island with a lot of people, so they have to control the number of cars on the road.
And I imagine those certificates get pretty expensive.
Exactly. Which leads to the third part: financial disincentives.
High taxes.
Extremely high. The source says a new car in Singapore can cost 3 or 4 times what it would in the US or Canada. They make it so expensive that it discourages people from buying cars casually.
But you can't just create all these obstacles without providing an alternative, right?
That is the key, and Singapore did it. They incentivized alternatives by building an excellent public transportation system. Their subway is considered one of the best in the world, plus they have great taxi and bus systems.
So it's a holistic approach. You need the vocabulary for both the problems and the solutions.
Precisely.
This brings us to more general travel advice, and this is where we really learn the difference between what you must do and what you should do.
That distinction is so important in practical English. A must is a rule, non-negotiable. A should is strong advice.
So starting with transportation. With a bus, you should tell the driver your destination before you get on.
Right, that's good advice, but you must have exact change for the fare. That's often a strict rule.
For flying, it's about safety. You should keep important things like medication or credit cards in your carry-on bag.
And you definitely shouldn't put them in your checked luggage. The risk of it getting live is just too high.
What about driving? The sources clear up a common confusion about international licenses.
Yeah, in most places you don't have to have one. But you must have a valid license from your own country. And you generally must be 21 or over to rent a car. The modal verbs there make the rules very clear.
Health and safety advice is full of shoulds. You ought to pack a first aid kit.
And a big one: you shouldn't drink the tap water in many countries.
With food, the advice is balanced. You should try local specialties.
But you'd better avoid street stalls where the hygiene might be questionable. You'd better is a very strong way of giving advice. It implies there could be bad consequences if you ignore it.
And for money safety, you shouldn't carry a lot of cash, and you ought to keep a copy of your credit card numbers back at the hotel, just in case.
It's all the language of planning for things to go wrong.
Finally, we get some specific tips for New York City, which are great examples of local advice.
The first one is key for any big trip. Don't try to do too much in a short time. It's about setting realistic expectations.
And students should bring their ID to get discounts at museums. That's a super practical use of should.
And I love the last piece of cultural advice. It challenges a stereotype.
That New Yorkers are unfriendly.
Right. The advice is don't be afraid to ask questions. They're happy to help visitors. It reminds you that being polite usually works, even in a huge, fast-paced city.
Okay, let's shift gears now into culture and communication, the nuances.
This is where understanding English goes beyond the words. It's about understanding the people and their experiences.
And our sources give us interviews with 2 immigrants, Hui from Vietnam and Ahmed from Egypt. Their stories are really insightful.
Let's start with Hui. She moved in 1998 and works in communications. Her biggest difficulty wasn't the language.
No, it was social, lacking relatives.
And she's very clear that having friends is not the same thing. In Vietnam, she explains, you visit relatives all the time, on holidays, on weekends. It's a built-in support system.
So for a learner, this is a huge insight. The biggest challenge can be the absence of a cultural structure you've always relied on.
And what does she miss the most? Her mom's cooking.
A classic answer.
It is, but it's so powerful. She says the local Vietnamese restaurants are good, but they're not the same. It's about losing that specific, familiar comfort.
Now, Ahmed from Egypt had a different main challenge. He moved for college in 2005. For him, the biggest difficulty was the educational system.
He said the teaching methods, the expectations, everything was very different from what I was used to.
And that's a key point for international students. It's not just learning the subject in a new language, it's learning how to learn in a completely new way.
Maybe more class participation, different kinds of exams, a whole new culture of learning.
And what he misses most is also family and friends, but he points to the practical problem. It's expensive to go home.
Right. He's looking forward to his friends visiting, which highlights how immigrants have to use this language of planning and hope to manage that distance and separation.
These stories lead us right into the subtleties of communication, the cultural traps that even advanced speakers can fall into.
Yes, the things that go beyond literal meaning.
We start with a nonverbal one, Raj's observation about people from India. This is a huge aha moment.
It is. He noticed that people from India sometimes move their heads from side to side when they talk.
And a Western listener would almost certainly assume that means no, or I don't agree, or I don't understand.
Exactly. But Raj learned that this head movement can actually mean yes. It can mean I agree with you.
Wow, that's a misunderstanding waiting to happen.
A big one. It just proves that communication is so much more than just the words. It's the whole context of body language.
And then there's a verbal one from North America that confused Raj. The phrase, hey, let's get together soon.
Ah, yes. He took it literally as a real invitation that he should follow up on and schedule.
But he realized it's often just a polite way to end a conversation. There's no real intention behind it.
Right. It's what linguists call a phatic expression.
Phatic.
Yeah, it's like social glue. It's about being warm and friendly, not about making a concrete plan. For a learner, recognizing these phatic phrases is key to not feeling confused or let down.
It's just a way of saying goodbye.
A warm goodbye, exactly.
Okay, now for some really diverse examples of culture, global marriage customs.
These are great. They really showcase cultural variety and the vocabulary you need to describe traditions.
Let's start in Japan. Emiko says the ceremony is often at a shrine, with just close family and friends.
And there's a specific gift exchange. Guests give money to the couple.
And the couple gives presents back. Emiko gave her guests a box and sweets because sugar symbolizes happiness. It's the language of symbolism.
Then we go to a native tribe in Paraguay for something very different.
A boxing match.
If two women want to marry the same man, they have a boxing match. The winner gets the husband.
That is definitely high-stakes decision-making.
To say the least. In Malaysia, there's a ritual where the couple has to eat uncooked rice during the ceremony.
Uncooked rice.
And in Italy, for a more romantic image, a friend or family member releases a pair of white doves after the ceremony.
To symbolize love and happiness.
Yep. And finally, in India, during a Hindu ceremony, there's a special ritual of pouring water over the bride and groom. This is meant to bring them closer together.
It's all this very specific, descriptive vocabulary you need to talk about culture.
For sure.
And from marriage customs to family dynamics, chores and complaints.
The everyday stuff. Our survey results give us a look at who does what in the house and what drives people crazy.
First question. Who is the messiest person in the house?
Overwhelmingly, the answer was boys.
A huge, 92% said their sons or brothers don't help much. They leave clothes lying around. They don't clean up after themselves.
This gives us that great relatable vocabulary for talking about messiness, leaving clothes lying around.
And in the kitchen, there's a big division. 84% said women do most of the work. The cooking, the dishes, the cleaning.
And what's the one kitchen-related chore that men and boys usually do?
Taking out the garbage.
The simplest, quickest task.
Interestingly, groceries were more equal. Boys and girls both tend to put the groceries away.
Yeah, that was a surprising result. But what really stands out to me is the idea of emotional labor. The survey found that women worry the most about household expenses, and this worry often comes out as nagging.
Yes, the source has a great example of this. A young man says his mom is always nagging him and his sister to get off the phone, get off the computer, turn off the TV.
Because she's worried about the bills. Her nagging is really a sign of her financial anxiety.
It's the language of domestic frustration.
It is, and we see that in intergenerational complaints, too. Jason and Lisa complaining about their parents.
Jason says his dad is forgetful. Always forgetting his car keys or his glasses.
Simple vocabulary for describing absent-mindedness.
And Lisa's complaint is the classic teenage embarrassment. Her mom wears awful clothes. Her style is old-fashioned.
And it's embarrassing. They joke that she needs fashion advice. It's a perfect example of how we use language to show that mix of love and total exasperation you feel for your family.
The feeling of being mortified by your own parents. A universal experience.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's move into our last section. High-stakes situations. This is where you need more sophisticated vocabulary for dilemmas, jobs, and entertainment.
Right, moving beyond the everyday into more complex topics.
Let's start with moral and financial predicaments. Tough choices.
The first one is the ultimate test. A guy finds $750,000, he returns it, and all he gets is a thank you phone call.
So this immediately starts a debate about honesty versus self-interest.
You need the vocabulary to talk about his moral compass, his ethical obligation. But the reactions from people show the conflict with pure temptation.
Pat's reaction is all self-interest. She'd spend it on clothes and jewelry. It's instant gratification.
But then you have Phil, who says he's so honest, I scare myself sometimes.
That's a great line.
It is. He'd take it straight to the police because he's hoping that honesty pays off with a big reward. So their language shows that whole spectrum, from opportunism to principled integrity.
Okay, scenario 2. You're overseas and you lose all your money and credit cards.
A crisis. You need the vocabulary of crisis management.
Jane and Bert have the standard answer. Call your parents for money or go to your embassy. It's relying on a formal support system.
But Susan has a much more independent, resourceful plan.
She'd sell her watch or camera, or even get a job as a waitress to earn the money for a flight home.
It shows the different responses, from dependency to complete self-reliance.
The last dilemma is about intervening. You see two people fighting violently on the street.
The person in the source material walked away thinking, it's none of my business, but then felt regret.
So this opens up the discussion of personal safety versus social responsibility.
The options range from doing nothing to getting directly involved. One person says they just call the police. That's the safest option.
Another suggests the very risky move of trying to physically break up the fight.
A safer middle ground is to shout for someone to call the police, to create a distraction without putting yourself in direct danger. You need words like duty to intervene or calling emergency services to even have this debate.
This is all very practical.
Right.
And that leads us to careers and job requirements.
Vital practice for anyone looking to work in an English-speaking environment.
The first job mentioned is telephone sales. It's dismissed as boring.
And requiring a specific skill. You need to be good at selling.
Now contrast that with the assistant entertainment director on a cruise ship. Sounds fun. You get to travel.
But there's a crucial requirement. The applicant must speak at least one other language.
And Brad, the applicant, only speaks English, so he was rejected.
It's a sharp lesson for learners. Language skills are often a non-negotiable job requirement. You need to understand phrases like must speak or rejected due to lack of skill.
Then we have people trying to find the right career fit for their personality. Bill loves working with people and traveling. He doesn't want an office job.
And he's not worried about making a lot of money right now, so the best fit for him, a travel guide.
Then there's Shannon. She wants to help people, maybe work in a children's hospital in a developing country.
Her goals are ambitious, so her best fit is a doctor or a nurse, which requires a huge educational commitment.
And Ben, who wants to be an actor, he rejects the regular 9-to-5 job. And he's already working out and taking acting lessons.
It shows the language you need to talk about dedication to a non-traditional career path.
What I find most useful are the self-assessments. Someone says they'd be a good journalist because they're good at writing.
But they know they'd be a terrible stockbroker because they can't make decisions quickly and are terrible under pressure. That's key vocabulary for talking about your weaknesses.
Louisa says she'd be a bad politician because she's not good at working with others and is too moody.
So she pivots. She'd be a good architect because she's creative and likes to work alone. She's balancing collaborative skills against individual work.
And Tim thinks he'd be a bad restaurant manager because he's too disorganized.
Yeah.
But a good teacher because he's patient and hardworking.
This kind of nuanced self-analysis is exactly what you need for a job interview. It's the language of professional self-evaluation.
Okay, finally, our last topic, media and movies. How will we talk about entertainment?
A very common social topic.
First, just describing actors in films. Actor 1 is known for playing unusual characters like the Mad Hatter and Captain Jack Sparrow.
That's Johnny Depp.
Movie 1 is an action movie from 2010 with DiCaprio about stealing info from people's minds. It's described as confusing, but with amazing effects.
That has to be Inception. And we learn the words for narrative complexity, confusing, and technical skill. Amazing effects.
Movie 2 is a sci-fi film by James Cameron set on Pandora. It's about a clash of cultures.
Avatar. A great way to summarize a complex theme quickly.
And Actress 1 is excellent in both dramas and comedies, like Mamma Mia and The Iron Lady.
Meryl Streep. So we see high praise adjectives like excellent and versatile.
Now for the Critics' Corner, a review of a James Bond film, which is a perfect model for how to agree and disagree politely but strongly.
They both agreed on the new Bond actor. They loved him. They called him warm, human, funny, and totally believable.
4 very specific positive adjectives. A masterclass in giving a compliment.
But they were divided on the story. One critic called it standard. The usual women, the usual villain.
The other strongly disagreed. He thought it was unusually good and mentioned the exciting car chases and a great surprise ending. So you see the vocabulary of predictable versus exciting.
The music was also a point of conflict. One critic said it was awful and too modern.
The other found it interesting and said it really added to the action scenes.
It shows you need that range from awful to added to the action to express strong opinions.
And finally, the special effects. One critic dismissed them as the same old stuff. A flying car, a pen that's a gun.
The other one passionately disagreed, calling them the best ever in a Bond film. This dialogue gives you the essential language for both positive and negative criticism.
Wow. So we've covered a huge amount of ground today.
We really have.
We've gone from negotiating skating lessons to solving city pollution to debating what to do with $750,000, all through the lens of real English conversations.
And this whole deep dive, it should give you confidence, not just with new words, but with navigating the social expectations behind the language.
Exactly. What's so fascinating to me is that the real complexity isn't usually in the grammar. It's in the context.
Knowing that a head wobble can mean yes or that let's get together isn't a real plan. Understanding the subtext, that's what unlocks real fluency.
It is. We saw Terry wishing his life weren't so difficult, Susan facing the idea of selling her camera to get home, Phil wrestling with his moral compass.
All of these real-life dilemmas.
So thinking about all of this, the struggle for independence, the crises, the conflicts, here's a final thought for you, the listener. What is one immediate small change you could make in your own daily interactions that would make your use of English both more honest and less difficult?
That's a great question.
Think about the power of a simple, genuine apology like Ted's, or a clear, direct question like the ones at the airport. Think about how much complexity you can cut through with just a little bit of simplicity and honesty. That's your next step toward real linguistic mastery.